Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 11 here, and we are looking at the Jeremiah scroll, chapter 17 and 31. So, a new covenant for all the nations. I'm going to try to get my camera here in the middle of the screen and a little bit out of your field of view. So, we have in Jeremiah 31. I'm really not taking anything from Jeremiah 17. I'll leave that to you to use as you see fit. I'll have to meditate a bit more on that myself before I teach the lesson. I'm not going to read all these scriptures because it will clearly take too much time, but just try to give us a general overview. This is what the Lord says: I will be the God of all the families of Israel, and they will be my people. We must understand this is language used directly from the book of Exodus when the Lord said that I will be their God and they will be my people. And again, I will build you so that you will be rebuilt, virgin Israel. They will come when watchmen will call out of the hill country, come, let's go up to Zion, to the Lord our God. So part of the angle I'm taking with this is because Jeremiah is one of the latter prophets, coming pretty close to the end of Judah's existence as a kingdom, as Israel is no more, and they've been in exile for over 100 years. He's not a contemporary with most of the prophets that prophesied during the time of Isaiah, that being Micah, Hosea, and so forth. So, with that, understanding he's one of the last of the prophets, not obviously the total, he's still considered one of the former prophets because we have post exilic prophets of Zechariah, Haggai, Malachi, and so forth. But the point being is that before we get to the Babylonian captivity, him being one of the last ones here, the question that I'm asking here is whether or not he's pulling from some of the phrases as allusions that he's using of some of his predecessors, i.e., in this case, maybe Isaiah and Micah here, and incorporating their words into his prophecy when he says, Isaiah, when he uses the phrase here, come, let's go up to Zion, because this is what Isaiah and Micah both had to say in Isaiah 2 and Micah 4. All nations will stream up to Jerusalem. Say, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. Again, almost verbatim directly from Micah 4. Let's go up to the house of, or to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, where again he will teach us about his ways so that we will walk in his paths, which is the thrust of the context of Jeremiah 31, because it's converging on the idea of a new covenant where these very words are going to be written upon the hearts of those who are participants of this new covenant, right? And it's a promise of a new Exodus. He says in verses 8 and 9, watch, I'm going to bring them from the northern land. I will gather them from the remote regions of the earth. The blind and the lame will be with them among those who are pregnant and those about to give birth. So maybe this too is an allusion to what Isaiah and Micah have prophesied, because we go to Isaiah 35 and we are told, the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf will be unstopped, and the lame will leap like a deer. The tongue of the mute will sing for joy. Water will gush out in the wilderness and streams in the desert. So these very concepts here are alluding back to the original Exodus story when they're walking through desert land that is barren and complete ruinous waste. But yet God is cracking open rocks and bringing streams of water to water both man and beast that number in the thousands, hundreds of thousands perhaps. And so, with that, it's the promise of a new Exodus that's going to come on the heels of these captivity movements that happened first with the northern kingdom under Assyria and the southern kingdom of Judah under Babylon, right? But it's the concept of there being a carving out of a way. That's what we get to in the end here when it says a road will be there, a way, and it will be called the holy way. So, holiness requires that those people who are this blind, deaf, lame, mute cannot be in places that are considered holy, at least in a priestly sense. There are even people who are born within the tribe of Levi and are destined to serve as either Levites or priests cannot approach if they have these physical maladies. They can receive the nourishment that is meant for the people through food offerings, but that's it, and only certain ones at that. They cannot serve in these offices because they cannot appear before Yahweh in this lamed state, but yet they will be completely healed and brought on to this holy way that's leading up to Zion. The unclean will not travel on it, but it will be for the one who walks the path. Micah will say something similar in Micah 7 when he says, a day will come after rebuilding your walls, a day that your boundary will be extended. And on that day, people will come to you from Assyria and the cities of Egypt, and even from Egypt to the Euphrates River, and from sea to sea and mountain to mountain. because he goes on to talk about how they will return here as a great assembly. They will come weeping, but I will bring them back with consolation. They will and lead them to be filled with water, a smooth way where they will not stumble. For I am Israel's father, and Ephraim is my firstborn. And again, we would allude to Isaiah 19 here, where he says that there will be basically super highways built between Egypt and Israel, between Assyria and Jerusalem, for all of these peoples and everyone caught in this triangle to come and worship Yahweh there. And it's not meant to be understood in a literal sense because it's speaking of the very thing that Jesus was talking to the Samaritan woman at the well about in John 4, that worship in spirit and truth of Yahweh would happen all over the world. And this cross section is meant to be an understanding of that as something of a foreshadowing of how multiple nations will be gathered together on Zion, which is no longer going to be a point on the map, but the world. Then we have Abraham becoming the father of many nations in 1, because Jeremiah says, and your children will return from the enemy's land. But now it's important for us to understand something. Right before this verse, this is what we have. Jeremiah saying, the Lord says, a voice was heard in Ramah, a lament with bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because of her children. We know this is a direct reference to the story that happened when Rachel died in childbirth, buried there at Ramah, and now this is supposed to be her in the spirit realm, essentially seeing the captivity that's going to happen when her own children are passing out of the land of their inheritance to be carted off into exile for an indeterminate period of time from their perspective. But Jeremiah knows, of course, it's going to come at an end within 70 years, and he tells the people who are willing to listen this very thing. But here Matthew picks up on this and uses this as a way of capturing the very lament that's going on with respect to the exile pervading the land and prevailing within the land, as goes the spiritual exile the people are within, languishing until Messiah comes. He has been born, but sadly, the Pharaonic king of Herod the Great is punishing innocent Israelites because he's trying to find this messianic child that wise men, magi, came from the Far East to see, and that child has eluded his grasp. And so, of course, he's lashing out the way that the Pharaoh of Egypt did in the days of Moses, right? So this becomes a messianic prophecy in the workings of Matthew's mind, guided by the Spirit. And the point simply being in all of that is to just simply capture the fact that we are talking about the days of Messiah being when this new covenant is ultimately brought to pass and ratified. But again, is this an allusion to Isaiah? Well, a bit of a larger passage here, but one of the servant songs. Yet as you listen, the children you have been deprived of will say, this place is too small for me. Make room for me that I may settle. Then you will say to yourself, wait a minute, who fathered these children for me? Isaiah is essentially saying that this is what the renewal will be like, that all of the children that Israel was deprived of will suddenly come back, suddenly, and Israel will turn around like a mother not recognizing her own children and saying, wait a minute, who are you? And the child will say, I'm yours. You birthed me. How? I couldn't have birthed you. Because he goes on in this dialogue here to say, I was deprived of my children, unable to conceive, exiled and wandering. So who brought them up? Who raised these children if I wasn't here? See, I was left by myself, but these, where did they come from? So this is what Yahweh says. Look, I will lift up my hand to the nations and raise my banner to the peoples. They will bring your sons in their arms, and your daughters will be carried on their shoulders. But again, if this was ethnic Israel that was being talked about here, why wouldn't the mother recognize them? It's not because they blended in with the peoples, it's because of the fact these are the peoples who are now a part of this renewed Israel, part of the stock that they've been grafted into. So they are spiritual heirs of Abraham's promises. This is what Isaiah said, and this is seemingly what Jeremiah is picking up on when he talks about this. And here, the flaw of broken Israel and all humanity will ultimately be fixed because Jeremiah goes on to say, the days are coming. It's the Lord's declaration when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that he made with them at Sinai when he led them out of Egypt. Instead, he will put his teaching within them, write it on their hearts. I will be their God. They will be my people, going back to what's said here. And again, the context of Exodus. No longer will one teach his neighbor, saying, know the Lord, but they will all know me, for I will forgive their iniquity and again, never remember their sin. And this is exactly what or Moses says when he's re-giving the law to the people in Deuteronomy. So it's a direct allusion to the words of Moses. He says to circumcise your hearts. And then later on in chapter 30, he says, again, circumcise your heart, or I'm sorry, God will circumcise your heart and the hearts of your descendants. This is a prelude and a promise to what will come nearly 1,000 years later. And it's not just a promise for the houses of Israel and Judah, it is a promise for everyone because of the fact this is what the writer of Hebrews is picking up on. And he is speaking to the idea of the surpassing of the old covenant for the sake of the giving of the new. And if we are participants of the new covenant, then we cannot draw any potential hope from what Jesus said to his disciples when he told them to eat and drink, for this is the body and blood that is given, and the blood itself is what is writing the new covenant, such that if we take of the Lord's Supper and we take a drink of that juice, then we're not partaking in the new covenant. This is meant only for ethnic Israel, but it's not, as the writer of Hebrews makes quite clear, and so do the rest of the New Testament authors, and there are ways of alluding to it. So we understand this is a renewal of Israel with an expansion in mind to bring the nations in as part of it, right? A new covenant for all the nations. So hope that helps. More to follow when we get to the big breakdown. Thanks for listening.